Welcome once again to Masters of the Nerdiverse. Back again. Really excited to speak to everyone today. Go over a couple of things and see how my week went and see how the Nerdiverse went, as it were. Once again, I am your host, Mike G, here to show you that I have such sights to show you. I'm not going to mention what that quote is. I'm pretty sure you already know. Now you can actually find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and now even YouTube. I'm going to step up my game there and have a YouTube actual video playing with this podcast. Working out some of the kinks today, so that may not go up until the following day that you hear this. Or if you're actually a time traveler here in the future, it's all going to be right there ready for you to view and listen to. So let's get started. Let's go into how the week went. New sound effects, folks. We're stepping up in this world, getting more powerful as I speak, like the Blob, kind of, just gaining mass and becoming more dangerous. I don't know how that sounds, but let's roll right with it. My week was pretty good this week. It was very eventful. I had a lot of fun, going places, checking things out, and happened to complete some things and view some things. So let's go right into it. This week, I played a bit more Injustice 2. I'm starting to wane on the game a bit. Leveled all the characters that I want to level, and really ready to move on to the next fighting game. Not to say that this game isn't incredible, because it is. Everything about it I love, from the character design to the storyline to the graphics to the attention to detail. If you're a DC fan, if you're a comic books fan, you have a general to obscure amount of information on any DC comic, Superman, Batman, The Flash, Wonder Woman, you will love this love letter to the genre. It's a good fighting game. I recommend it to anyone. Pick it up. It's amazing. In regards to fighting games, I'm really thinking about jumping on to Tekken 7. That's going to be the next game I'm going to pick up, just because I love Tekken and it looks like a bunch of fun, and I want to jump into that and kind of learn that system as well. And I believe it actually takes arcade sticks too, or fight sticks as they call them, where it's like the arcade, where you have the joystick and the 6-button layout is not on the controller. And you can play video games like that now as well. So it's really will make it fun and interesting to learn the system that way. Speaking of learning new systems, I actually finished Uncharted 4 at Thieves' End, which I gotta say had an amazing ending. Didn't expect that. I didn't really know how they were gonna end the story of Nathan Drake, but it came out really good, and I recommend it to anyone. I'm not gonna do any spoilers because I'm happy it wasn't spoiled on me after not playing the game like a couple of years after it was released. But I will say that the way they did it was pretty finite and pretty, I would say, I hate to use the word interesting. I think it was pretty good. I like the way they wrapped it up. It was a nice send-off to the character, and I'm interested in what they're going to do with the franchise going forward, because, no franchise can die until it stops making money, and Uncharted 4 made a ton of money. So I expect more out of this franchise. And actually, during this last E3, they had the new game coming up where it had the female heroes. I forget their names, but they're coming out with their own game and brand of Uncharted. So I may have to pick that up just to see how it looks and how it works out. Speaking of checking to see how things worked out, I saw a few movies this weekend. I Netflixed and chilled, as it were. More chill than Netflix, but what can you do? I watched a indie horror movie called The Void. It's a very interesting horror movie. I'm using interesting a lot, aren't I? That's okay. We're all interesting people, aren't we? The horror movie, it actually wears its influences on its sleeve. It takes a bit from Hellraiser, it takes a bit from In the Mouth of Madness, some Lovecraftian horror, and it takes a bit from The Prince of Darkness, directed by John Carpenter. If you haven't seen that movie, check it out. I was a grown man when I watched it, and it gave me nightmares. Actually, literally jacked my brain up. But The Void is good in regards to its effects. It's not very CG heavy, which is good for horror movies, because horror movies nowadays lean into CG so hard that it makes things not scary. It's all practical effects and blood gags and fleshy horror bits that I love as an old school horror fan. The only critique I would give of this movie without spoiling it is it gave me a hard time maintaining my attention. I wasn't really able to stay focused on the movie while it was on. I was actually drawing the cover for this week's podcast, and while kind of in earshot of the film and kind of looked up whenever something sounded creepy or an atmospheric event was happening. But needless to say, I would recommend the film. It is right up my alley, but at the same time, the plot was a little too dense for itself. It was more talking to itself than talking to us as the viewer. That's how I feel about it. So in that case, I would definitely recommend it, but it's something that's not going to knock your socks off. But in this day and age, it's a very good horror movie, given the caliber of horror movies we've been given. And speaking of a high caliber, I also checked out the horror-related Netflix series, quote-unquote, Castlevania, based off the Konami video game. Now, it says it's a series, but let's be honest. It's a animated movie broken up into 4 parts. Each part is about 30 minutes, and it's fairly short. It's actually, for a series, it's extremely short. And that's my really only gripe about the actual movie, or series as it were, because other than that, it's incredible. The animation's great. It easily explains, I would say, decades of Castlevania lore and boils it down into one story. And you feel for the characters in the short amount of time you have with them. This one takes place around Castlevania 3-ish. I was wondering if they're going to go with Trevor or go with Simon Belmont. If you're familiar with the Castlevania story, those were the whip-carrying heroes of those tales going into the Castle of Dracula, which is literally the size of a small state, and having to defeat the creatures therein. But it's focused on Trevor and kind of his road to being a hero. I would absolutely recommend it to anyone who's a fan of Castlevania or a fan of general animation, because it's a very beautiful show. It's directed well, and it caught my attention really quick. I was drawing during that too. I had to put my tablet down once it really started ramping up. So I would absolutely recommend that series. With Netflix, there's not that many series that come along that really grab my attention that are Netflix made. One in particular I tried getting into was, I believe it was one of their earliest animes. The name really escapes me at the moment, but it was okay. I mean, it's fairly interesting. It's interesting to me that Netflix is creating all this content on their own. And I know they have the money to do it, and they're getting high caliber creators and actors and voice actors and directors and animators to do all this. And it's kind of interesting. It's kind of cool to see this once independent streaming service become its own movie studio in a weird way. So I say more power to it, in a sense that it's really going to push the buttons of big Hollywood, so to speak, and make them step up. Because Netflix doesn't necessarily need to rely on a Sony or a Warner Brothers to produce content. They're producing their own content. And if they are doing anything like this Castlevania anime, I'm all for it. And I gotta say that the star of my week so far was Spider-Man Homecoming, the latest film in the Marvel Studios line of movies that, of course, includes Webhead himself. Now, I wasn't really going to say much about this film because, one, it recently came out, and I don't want to spoil anything. But I've been hearing a lot of polarizing ideas about this movie. A lot of people either love it or hate it. And I think that's really weird for, one, a Marvel movie, and two, for a Spider-Man film. Because I loved it, but my nostalgia for Spider-Man 2 is so strong it won't let me say it's better than it, if you know what I mean. Homecoming hit all the right marks. It's a very different Spider-Man movie, and not in regards to the action or in regards to the suit. If you've seen Spider-Man, you know exactly how that all works out. But in regards to the actual tone of the film, it's very different. It's a very different film. And it focuses more on Spider-Man kind of coming up and becoming a hero and pretty much learning how to balance life as a teenager and as, Spider-Man, the hero. And it plays with that really, really well, better than I would say any of the previous movies. And it really shows a green Spider-Man, not costume-wise, but in experience. And you feel his vulnerabilities, you feel his shakiness to perform, so to speak, in heroic ways. And you really feel for the character. And that's the first time I've ever felt that about a Spider-Man actor or a Spider-Man character in a film in regards to being scared for the kid. Because a lot of the time in his early settings, he doesn't know what he's really capable of. So you see him do things kind of bass backwards, as it were, whereas a seasoned Spider-Man would have been like, okay, I got this sewn up. I know exactly what to do. Got this webbed up, as it were. And you see him struggle kind of trying to figure out how to be Spider-Man. What is Spider-Man? You know what I mean? As a concept versus what is it as something that I do. And the movie, I would say, explores that very well. The supporting cast is great. I want to say that Michael Keaton's Vulture is my second favorite villain to Doc Ock, once again giving up into my nostalgia for Spider-Man 2. But Michael Keaton, as I thought he would kill the role, he absolutely killed the role 110%. And I want to see it again just to find his little nuances and to see the little things that he put into the role in regards to how to play a villain that is understandable and relatable. And you kind of feel for the guy. And I think that this movie really emphasizes on character building and not as much as action, because action scenes were okay, but it's the standard fare when it comes to Spider-Man films. So I won't really ding it on that. But the supporting cast, some of them were a bit obnoxious and some of them were right on point. I think Flash Thompson kind of came off, well, not Flash Thompson, Flash. They didn't give him a last name. And they didn't do that to a lot of these characters because I think they were afraid to lock in those characters just yet because they still don't kind of know where all this is going. Such as the Zendaya Michelle character. She was very interesting and kind of felt added on. Like, Zendaya, as an actress, she's a fine actress, and I think she's going to have a bright future in Hollywood. But the character in this film felt kind of added. You know what I mean? It's you make this big bowl of spaghetti and it's perfect. But then, someone comes along and adds a grape on top of it. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't need that on my plate. Take it away. It's a good grape. You just take it off and eat it. But I don't need it to complete my bowl of spaghetti. And that's how the character felt. She felt very tacked on. But I can see where they needed that character. Because the whole movie has a really, really thick, Fast Times at Ridgemont High kind of vibe to it. Those movies back in the day. And I dig that because it's something that Spider-Man movies have never had. The Amazing Spider-Man films kind of deal with that, but they were so quick to make Spider-Man an adult that they just totally passed his adolescence. And I think that's a big mistake because now the average film goer is like, why is Spider-Man so young? Why is he a teenager? Why is he not a man? Where they don't realize because they didn't read the comics or follow any of the actual lore, as it were, that Spider-Man started out as a teenager. That was the whole point of the character, was showing teenage angst and adolescence and going through puberty, so to speak, exploring yourself and finding yourself in this great big world. And that's a lot of what Spider-Man Homecoming does, is it gives the character an arc. The Spider-Man that begins the movie is not the Spider-Man that ends the movie. And I think that's extremely important. And it lays a good foundation for future films, which of course they're going to be. They've already laid them out. And I just really enjoyed the film. And a lot of people are ridiculing it because they feel like the MCU stuff is tacked on, where I feel like the MCU stuff is actually gave some interesting bits for the future, but it also wasn't force-fed to you. I don't want to go into spoilers, but there are certain events that happen in previous films that will affect future villains in the Spider-Man MCU Spider-Man's future. And I think that's an interesting way to play on it, in a way to integrate the MCU into Spider-Man's world and make it make sense. I can't say more than good enough things about this film. And I want to see it again. I think I'm going to go check it out again this weekend because I want to be able to just really digest it. And I did want to comment on Robert Downey Jr.'s performance because a lot of people thought he was going to shoehorn and it'd be Iron Man 4 featuring Spider-Man, but that's not really the case for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. You can feel comfortable going to see it and not getting Robert Downey shoved down your throat as a insecure hope that he will bring in box office seats, where he is there and he has his presence felt, but he's not the story. It's about Peter Parker, and it's about him figuring out what Spider-Man is, just as important as who Spider-Man is. And it really brings that to home, and I definitely want to check it out again. The only other thing I did with my week this week is I actually did the artwork for this channel. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to add a spin to my podcast that I haven't seen other podcasters do, which is add a art tutorial or more of like an art breakdown of how I draw my covers and how I draw period. And I wanted to add that as a feature for my YouTube followers, for my future YouTube followers, all 2 of you. 2 turns into 20 really quick. But I wanted to add that new feature, something different that people can actually see my process on how I bring all this together. So I was able to do the front cover, which I'm going to be doing variations of that every week. So I look forward to that. And the characters on that front cover actually go right into the news. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know, where does that sound from? I think it's from Turtles in Time. Play Turtles in Time on Super NES. It's an extremely good game. Ready to go into the news, ladies and gentlemen, and go into how things are going in this new, shiny new world we're in. So I'm going to start from the top and work my way down. Marvel's New Warriors set is cast, including Squirrel Girl, which everyone's super excited about, which is fine for me. I added this to the list because I love casting news, because I like to see the faces they're attaching to the characters. So far, I believe they have cast Squirrel Girl. They've casted Night Thrasher. They cast my boy Speedball, which I'm extremely hyped for, and Debris. These are all characters known as the New Warriors, which started as a Marvel comic back in, I want to say, in the 80s, that included characters like Speedball. Nova was a New Warrior, and Night Thrasher. So I didn't even know they were doing a New Warriors show. So I'm kind of excited about that. I like the New Warriors, and it's really a doorway to other Marvel characters. I remember as a kid, my dad told me that his favorite thing about the Marvel Universe is that anyone can show up. Spider-Man you could be reading a Spider-Man comic and Thor just show up, and they'll just have a team up really quick. And that's always fascinated him, and thus fascinated me. So it's interesting to see them bring in new characters and bringing friendly faces that aren't necessarily going to be in an Avengers Infinity War, because the Marvel's universe is so much bigger than the films. You can do smaller vignettes of lesser known characters, and if they get super hype and big, then put them in the movies. I think that's the best formula to go forward with that. And I think it's destiny for a lot of these younger actors to get these roles and then build their film criteria based on that. And who doesn't like being in a Marvel world? I think they treat their actors pretty well now, at least, and they'll be able to grow from there. And speaking of Destiny, we're going to move on to, there is a white PS Pro, but it's exclusive to Destiny 2 bundle. The only reason I added this is because I really want a PS Pro, and I'm thinking about getting one, and I like the white of it's a very stark contrast to the black of your normal PS4. And I think it's kind of interesting that they're putting it in as an exclusive to Destiny 2, which is a game I never played. And, no one's played it. It's not out yet. Well, Destiny 1 for that sense. And what Destiny is from my understanding, because I'm not going to front like I played it, but haven't played it yet, it's a kind of it's like a 4v4 adventure game where you kind of go around with your buddies and go and run adventures, and it's almost like an MMORPG in that case. For those who don't know what that is, that's a massively MMO is a massively multiplayer online experience, something like that. He's not a nerd, guys. Throw him to the wolves. They're at his door. It's a really good game from what I hear, and it's something I never really able to get into because the other MMORPG I was playing was Final Fantasy XIV at the time, and I was eating my soul very, very slowly, so I had to back out of that. Fun game, but it will eat souls. Just know that it's the carrier of human souls. Next is, speaking of eating human souls, Ragnarok Pop's vinyl gives first look at Thor's soul tour from Thor Ragnarok. And for those who don't know, Thor Ragnarok is the film that's coming out later this year. It's going to be the end of the Thor trilogy. And it looks like it's going to kick all the asses, all 53 asses. And Surtur is a huge Thor villain that lives in the depths of hell. Not 2 L's, but 1 L. And it's a big giant, usually in the comics, it's a big giant skeleton monster man who has issues with Thor for some reason. And we finally get a look at the character via Pop Vinyl. And you can hear the quotation marks in my brain about Pop Vinyls. And it's one of those things where I wish I invented Pop Vinyl. But I'm not that smart. No, I don't think any of us are, to invent something that catches on so damn fast and just blows up and it's so easy to produce. It's like inventing the pent rock. You're just like, just go throw it out into the road and make variations of it and make millions. I wonder if it's building at billions at this point. Very interesting. But the look of the character looks very generic. It's just a skull dude that has a skeleton body. He kind of looks like El Diablo from Suicide Squad in a way. The Aztec warrior that was on fire, which was actually the best part of the film, in my opinion. Best character in the film, I might add as well. So, just wanted to add it to the news because it looks very interesting, and I'm curious to see how that's going to look in real time and see if it's going to transcend the universe. And speaking of transcendence, they premiered the first live-action teaser for the live-action version of the anime Bleach. Bleach, man. Bleach is an anime that breaks my damn heart because I grew up watching anime like any warm-blooded kid, like any warm-blooded male child, grown man child back in the day on Toonami. And you would see all these cool animes like Trigun and Cowboy Bebop and, of course, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto. And I came to Bleach like later in my life. Like I was like in my early 20s, late teens. And I loved Bleach. I marathoned every episode. And when the episode stopped, I kept through with the manga. And the manga is the Japanese version of comic book, for those who don't know. And I just really I was a diehard fan. You couldn't tell me anything about Bleach. I had it all over my house. I had like a little Abari Renji keychain for those who are Bleach fans out there. And the way it ended and the way it stopped and the story behind the drama of this show just broke my damn heart. I haven't completed a new anime since watching Bleach. I don't count Castlevania on Netflix. There's only like 4 episodes, but that's not done yet. But based on that and all that baggage, I watched the trailer and was like, man, it's like 4 seconds long, and it destroyed something. You see it's the remnants of the destruction, and you can tell he has the big giant Zangetsu, the Zanpakuto that he wields, which is his sword, for those who aren't familiar. And he kind of has the robes and stuff. You can't see his face. It looks pretty good. We'll see. Not going to hold my breath. What's the most they can do in 2 hours, right? So try not to stay too hype for that. Speaking of destroying hype, Horizon Zero Dawn adds New Game Plus mode and ultra hard difficulty. I've mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn in previous podcasts, and I absolutely love the game. It's my game of the year for PS4. It's visually stunning, captivating character development, open world environments. It's butter to play. It's so good. If you have a PS4 and you haven't picked it up, I absolutely recommend it. You will love it. And it's just so much to do. And I didn't 100% the game, but I did everything I wanted to do. I got the armor I wanted. I got the weapons I needed. I went through all the trials that I wanted to do. I hunted all the big game that I wanted to do. And I felt completed about it. Will I go back and play New Game Plus mode? Maybe when the actual official DLC comes out. Maybe. I'll jump back into it. I still need to jump back into Final Fantasy 15 and do all those side DLCs. So my plate's kind of full in that case. But I'm very excited for it. Now, I'm about this news because New Game Plus is always fun in video games, especially when you want to challenge yourself, because there's tons of challenges in that game and tons of creatures that are not easy to take down, and I can only imagine how bad it will be at New Game Plus. And for those who don't know what New Game Plus is after you beat the game, you gain certain abilities, experience, weapons, armor, looks, all that stuff, right? Well, what happens is the game will then start you from the beginning, but keeping all of those upgraded features. So you're thinking, well, will you just breeze through the game again? The answer is no, because what they do is they amp up the difficulty to the events and creatures that you previously faced. So it's even more difficult, but at the same time, you're more readily prepared. So a New Game Plus mode for this game is actually absolutely a great idea, especially because it's so big. And speaking of cleaning one's plate, would that be a plate of calamari? Fried calamari is good, but not when it's all wiggling and stuff. Speaking of calamari, Splatoon 2 releases its new hosts, Pearl and Marina. And Pearl is kind of like a blonde, Anglo-Saxon young lady who looks very goofy and kick-ass, but Marina seems to be our African-American squid with long purple and pink hair, just beautifully designed. And the internet's exploding. For those who don't know, Splatoon is one of the newest Nintendo properties to come out of I think it was the Wii U. And it's kind of like a 4v4 shooter game, but with ink. And all the characters are squids. You're a kid, and then you're a squid. Simple as that. And the announcers for the game have already been announced for this new rendition. The reason I add this character, or add this to the news, is because I think the representation of African Americans in video games is really picking up this year. And I think that's cool. I think representation in video games is absolutely important, not just for African Americans, but for all race, creeds, and colors and orientations. And I think it's easier for you to connect to a character if you feel attached to them on a certain level. And I think, which is a good segue into my next bit of news, which is the new villain/player character in Overwatch, Doomfist. He has a fist and it's full of doom. Once again, going back to representation in video games, Doomfist is an African-American character that you can now play in the game Overwatch. And Overwatch is a 6v6 shooter that was made by Blizzard, and it's an absolutely fun game. And the reason I play it, one, it says it's to die for. I play it almost every other night. It's a very good game. But the racial and the overall human diversity in this game is beautiful. Every race, creed, and color you can imagine is in this game. For the most part, they put very big extras on that. And I think the addition of Doomfist as a new African character, and he looks great. He has a giant Cable arm, Cable, the X-Men hero, but it's gold, and his whole entire thing is he punches the shit out of you at max speeds. You get bodied infinitely fast. I think that's cool as hell. So I'm really happy to see these two new representations in the video game world. And I think the game creators for being considerate to everyone when they make new characters and add new additions to the game. Speaking of a new addition, Tekken 7 is going to be adding a new DLC that includes classic Tekken Bowl mode. And going back to Tekken 7, I love Tekken Bowl. It's the best. I want to say it started in Tekken 3, which is actually my favorite Tekken of all time. So Tekken Bowl is pretty much just a mini game where you bowl and the announcer goes, great, when you bowl a strike. And then if you bowl like 3 strikes in a row, he goes, chicken. And that's the best sound clip ever. If you're ever on the internet, just pull up Tekken Chicken and listen to it like 60 times. You'll catch up to where most Tekken players have heard that line before. So I'm really excited for Tekken Bowl. So much so that I added it to the image for the podcast cover. So you'll see a little Hayashi Mishima in the corner, the little trophy that you get when you win Tekken Bowl mode. So definitely looking forward to that. And looking into the future of things, that I found an article that actually absolutely made my blood boil, and this will be the last bit of news, is PC mods use a patch to balance Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And I hate getting on Capcom. This is the third week in a row I've gotten on Capcom for something. But independent PC mods, modifiers, for those who don't know, these are people who take the PC version of the game and make little changes in the actual back end of the game. So if they want to make their character look like Ash from Pokemon, they can go ahead and make that change. But what these guys are doing is actually balancing the game to make it run better, to make the characters interact more, to make the fighting game more competitive. And it's like you have to rely on independent modders to make changes to your video game that has never been patched, that's never been updated to be more balanced. And that's horrible. I mean, that it would take this for people to be able to play a balanced version of this game. That makes sense. And the way Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's looking, which I'm not going to go really into, it just makes me really down on Capcom right now. Like, I don't want to, personally, I don't play Street Fighter V anymore. I'm kind of giving up on that game. And the way things are looking, I'm not going to be playing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. And I've never not bought a Marvel vs. game. Ever. Every single one. From starting at 2. I bought 2, bought 3. I went back and bought 1. I played all the SNK vs. Capcom games back on Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2. And this is going to be a first for me because Capcom's not showing me that they care as much about the game as I do, and I'm just a consumer. And with that happy bit of news, I'm going to shut down the news. A very interesting news week this week, and kind of interested to see what's going to be going on in the future. We got to fight for the future, as Bishop would say. Now, here's the section of the podcast where I would answer questions, but I haven't got any questions yet, y'all. Send me your questions so I can answer it. I'll do it. Just do it. And where can you send those questions at? I will tell you. Send them to mastersofthenerdiversecast@gmail.com. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Mike G, I just stepped into a vat of acid and my foot's dissolving as I speak. I was otherly occupied. Where can I send that email? And I'll say, one foot, you can send those to mastersofthenerdiversecast@gmail.com. I will answer your emails. At this point, I will answer anything that you send me. For asking me what time it is, I'll tell you. And I'll give you a shout out on the podcast so people can hear your name be echoed through the universe, just as I would like my name to be. And in closing, I'm going to go over pretty much what I'm excited for the upcoming week. I'm excited for getting Tekken 7 and playing some Tekken Bowl. I'm excited for Sub-Zero coming out for Injustice 2. I kind of want to see how that character feels. And I'm definitely going to be going over that next week on the podcast. I'm excited to actually be ironing out a co-host for the show. I have a couple of people that would like to do it and one that's really eager, so we'll see. Hopefully I can get someone locked in and it's not just me talking to the walls as always, but that's fine. I'm my best company. And I'm actually very interested to do more artwork for the next show and see how that artwork works out, as it were. So I'm excited for that to be coming down the pipe as well. And remember, please like, comment, and subscribe to however you find us. May you find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And you can also follow Masters of the Nerdiverse at mnerdiverse, and that's capital M, capital N in the word Nerdiverse spelled out. And you can find us on Twitter. You can send your questions there actually as well, and I'll be able to answer them in the order in which they're received. Once again, I am your host, Mike G, and I will always ask you to not be afraid and to go one step